No. On 770 CHQR right here in Calgary and in Edmonton on 630 CHED. Every Saturday morning at this time, I'll be speaking with Premier Jason Kenney about some of the issues of the day, but this is really your opportunity to ask questions of the Premier, to voice your concerns or raise issues that you feel need to be addressed. Whatever's on your mind, you can speak with the Premier one-on-one. Just remember to keep it short and respectful and be patient. We do get a lot of calls and texts, and please keep those text messages short as well. We get a lot of those. Premier Kenney wants to hear from you. You can call or text at 403-974-8255 in Edmonton, 780-496-0063, and across the province, 1-800-563-7770. Now, Premier Kenney, welcome to the show.
Great to be back, Wayne.
And you are joining us on the show today from our Chorus station in Ottawa. So why the trip to our nation's capital?
Just down here for 36 hours, mainly to attend a policy conference and catch up with a lot of colleagues, ministers from other provinces, MPs, and others who I haven't seen for a couple of years.
So no official provincial business?
No, this is more of a personal trip just for 36 hours down here. And part of it is I'm thinking forward to our platform for the next general election and wanted to start getting some ideas from some people who spend a lot of time thinking about policy reform.
All right. Now, late yesterday, the Federal Court of Canada granted Alberta intervener status in 4 legal challenges against the Emergency Act, which of course was used during the truckers' protest. So pretty pleased with that ruling. But at the same time, you've been the subject of criticism for not using our own province's Critical Infrastructure and Defence Act in the Coots border protests. Now, on the surface, it seems to me to reflect a degree of consistency on your part, but a statement that you made, and I quote, "It is our duty to do everything we can to protect Albertans' freedoms and liberties from this kind of breach." That quote seems to have drawn renewed fire, the criticism stemming from the belief from some groups that you didn't do enough to protect our freedoms and liberties. So how do you respond to that?
Well, as you know, there are kind of two polar opposite perspectives out there on these issues. I don't think it's so confusing, Wayne. Here's my view. People have a right to lawful and peaceful protest in our country, period, full stop. People do not have a right to block highways. And we did use, the RCMP did lay a charge under the Alberta Critical Infrastructure Act against an individual who was involved in the Coots border blockade. We demonstrated in Alberta that we could use the normal legal tools, the normal laws, and normal police tactics to stop the illegal blockade.
But it took 18 days.
And again, as you'll recall, casting your mind back to that time, Wayne, I made it very clear that there were some operational and tactical challenges that the RCMP had to work through. Now, you know full well that I cannot and should not pick up the phone and call the commander of K Division for RCMP in Alberta and say, micromanage the tactics of a complex police operation. In particular, Wayne, RCMP got intelligence about midway through that blockade about the storage of a large number of armaments and ammunition with some people who apparently had violent intent. And so they needed to plan for and implement a tactical operation to neutralize that potentially violent threat. So we had to be very sensitive about all of that. I made it absolutely clear we expected the police to do their job and enforce the laws as they did in a safe and appropriate way. In terms of the Federal Emergencies Act, that has nothing to do with this. This was, in our view, a huge overreach, a dangerous precedent. Yeah. We didn't need Justin Trudeau's government to arbitrarily freeze people's bank accounts in order to implement the law with respect to a border crossing. So there was no need for that, at least not in the Alberta context. I don't think it's been justified whatsoever. And also, we see it as a violation of provincial jurisdiction, which is why we were in court with the Canadian Constitution Foundation and the Canadian Civil Liberties Association challenging the use of the Federal Emergencies Act.
All right, let's switch gears. Healthcare. On last week's show, one of our callers outlined the incredible emergency room wait that he and his wife had to endure around that same time, or it may have been a week or two ago, my dad and his wife spent about 12 hours waiting for treatment at a hospital emergency room. Now, these kind of stories sadly are becoming more common, but now our kids are having to go through this. Long wait times in pediatric emergency rooms. I know it's a complicated issue it's not going to be fixed overnight, but in the meantime, is there something your government can do?
Well, what we are, it's our job to provide the resources. Alberta Health Services is a Crown corporation that's responsible for administering the second biggest healthcare budget on a per capita basis in Canada. We've increased it by about $2 billion. There are 100 more doctors working in Alberta now than a year ago. 1,800 more nurses in the system than when we came to office 3 years ago. About 1,300 more EMS personnel. And we're making billions of dollars of investments in expanding healthcare capacity, in training and recruiting more nurses, in physician and nurse retention and recruitment in rural areas that are under particular stress often. And so we are putting the resources there. We're expanding the number of baseline ICU beds. At the end of the day, we need AHS to deliver the services Albertans deserve and are paying for with one of the most expensive publicly funded healthcare systems in the world. And now, there are times, as you know, from time to time when there are significant stresses. The fact that we have over 1,000 people in hospital with COVID right now is an additional stress, plus the fatigue that healthcare workers have been going through over the past 2 years. So this is not unique to Alberta. The whole system across Canada is under stress. And as I say, we are providing the resources, and we need to see the results.
All right. We'll go to the phones now. Harold has been waiting, I think, from even before you came on the show, Mr. Kenney. Harold, you're on with Premier Jason Kenney. Go ahead, sir.
Good morning, Premier Jason.
Good morning, Harold.
I'm 80 years old. I live by myself in my house on a fixed income of approximately $25,000 a year. Now, that's my priority and my choice. I want to stay in my house as long as possible. Since COVID-19 came along, it's claimed a lot of seniors, and I sometimes wish the heck it had taken me also. There are thousands of us that are in this place in this province. I worked 50 years, raised my family, paid off my house and debts, and paid millions in overall taxes. I have never collected a penny from the government, either federal or provincial.
Okay, your question, Harold?
Yeah. Pardon?
Your question, sir.
Yeah. With the latest increase in everything we buy now, we're being starved out of our house. I've voted Conservative all my life. What can you do to specifically help us seniors?
Well, thanks, Harold. And I'm sorry about what you were going through. And I know the inflation is hitting seniors on fixed incomes harder than anybody, because a lot of the people who are in the workforce are seeing, or they'll likely see some wage increases, but you should be seeing indexation on your seniors benefits, your federal benefits of, I'm not sure which ones you're on, but CPP, old age security, guaranteed income supplement, and the other benefits. And we are providing more support for people dealing with the cost of living than any government in Canada, with fuel tax elimination, electricity rebate, and the gas price protection. But I'm mindful that seniors on fixed incomes are in a particular pinch, and we're looking, if the economy continues to go in a good direction and our fiscal situation continues to improve, we are looking at whether we can take some additional measures, particularly to help seniors on fixed incomes.
All right, we'll go to Terry now. Terry has a question on Class 3 licenses. Go ahead, Terry.
Yeah, I'm 72, and I just renewed. I have a Class 3, and I worked for the city for years, and we were tested every 5 years, eye test, written test, physical. And now I'm told when I go back at 75, they only renewed it for 2 years. A medical costs me $180. And, a week before, they're short of school bus drivers. I live out in the rural, and I work for farmers the odd time, helping them harvest and seeding. But now they throw up this, there's always barriers for us. And I mean, the government has my health records, my driving records, and Mr. Ford in Ontario was dropping that provision now where you have to have a medical, because it was discriminatory, especially if you're healthy. I'll only be 75, and I'm healthy. But now if it costs me $180 to go to work, I'm not going to, why would I bother, just to work part-time?
I hear you, Terry.
I mean, that's mostly what seniors do.
Yeah. Well, Terry, thanks for putting that on the radar screen here. And you're right. I know a lot of seniors make a few extra dollars doing things like being part-time school bus drivers and other occasional work like that, and it keeps people active as well, which is a good thing. I think our education minister, because we have an overall shortage of school bus drivers, and one of the problems there is the new so-called MELT standards for driving for commercial driving licenses, and it's a complicated thing. We have to bring it in because the Americans are, et cetera. But I know she's looking at ways that we can cut some red tape to address the shortage of school bus drivers. And let me take a look at what you just mentioned Ontario is doing. I mean, obviously, we want to make sure that folks who are driving school bus are safe to do so. But if there are barriers to getting safe drivers into that workforce, then we should take a look at that for sure. So thanks for raising it.
All right, Premier Kenney, we're going to pause for a break. I'm Wayne Nelson. I'll be back with Premier Jason Kenney and more of your calls and texts when we return on Your Province, Your Premier.
Callum.
Yes, Michael?
This question isn't coming from Mr. Jones. It's just something I'm curious about.
I'll be happy to answer it if I can.
These amazing pendants you design, how do you come up with the names for those?
Oh, that's easy.
How so?
Every pendant we design is symbolic.
Go on.
A symbol is a shape that says something.
Yes.
And that same thing can be said in words.
Okay.
And those words will be the name of the pendant.
Genius. Now I can see what Mr. Jones saw in you when you were just a lowly shepherd in Scotland.
I was never a shepherd, Michael.
Do we have a new pendant for Mother's Day?
Oh, yes. It's called I Will Love You Forever.
And?
It's the symbol of infinity. Very elegant, with 2 diamonds representing 2 people right where the 2 loops intersect.
How much?
I Will Love You Forever. Just $99 exclusively at Spence Diamonds.
Woo! Spence Diamonds. Wow! Located across from Chinook Center.
With today's changing world, it's vital to have a plan in place. Here's Aaron from McMillan Estate Planning.
Have you considered how an estate plan can not only benefit you after your passing, but can also protect your loved ones, business, retirement, and estate during your lifetime? We'll be discussing this more at our upcoming estate planning webinar.
Register today for McMillan Estate Planning's upcoming complimentary estate planning webinar on Wednesday, May 18th at mcmillanestate.com or call 1-833-266-6464.
The Cedar Shop, bringing nature to you.
If you want a sauna, check out our barrel kits, privacy screens, and lattices. The Cedar Shop has what you need to make the most out of your outdoor living space this year. Get started today and check out Cedar Shop's quote portal at cedarshop.com and be sure to ask about their free citywide delivery program. The Cedar Shop in Calgary.
The Cedar Shop.
You're in the market for a new appliance, so you decide to go to Coast Appliances because A, we have the best selection, B, we carry more than 50 top brands, C, we offer expert advice, D, we offer a price match guarantee, or E, don't worry, we won't run through the entire alphabet. If you answered A, B, C, or D, you would be correct. And visiting Coast Appliances for the best selection on more than 50 top brands and expert advice and a price match guarantee to beat any competitive store is a definite win. And that price guarantee goes for any appliance for any budget, from entry level to super luxury. And Coast Appliances has been in the appliance business for over 40 years. Wow, that's a lot of dings.
Hi, I'm Gord Howie, CEO of Coast Appliances. For expert advice and the best prices on top brand name appliances, think Coast first. Visit our Coast Appliances showrooms in Calgary South on Centre Street next to Chinook Center, or in Calgary North behind the Sunridge Mall.
Wondering what the Premier is thinking? Need to ask him a question or two? Now's your chance.
You're listening to Your Province, Your Premier on 770 CHQR, Calgary's News, Today's Talk.
Welcome back. Your Province, Your Premier airs every Saturday morning at this time from 10 till 11 throughout Alberta, here in Calgary on 770 CHQR and in Edmonton on 630 CHED. I'm Wayne Nelson, your host and moderator, and we do apologize this morning for some early technical issues. We think we've got that sorted out now so that we can actually hear the Premier. Premier Kenney, we've got a lot of phone calls. We've got a ton of text. I don't know how I'm going to get through them all. So let's start with one that came early, and it said, Mr. Kenney, what is the progress on Alberta Police, and is it realistic to expect we will see this come to pass in the next 2 years? That one from Fred.
The progress is that we're now in detailed consultations, particularly with municipalities and First Nations, on a report that was done by PwC Pricewaterhouse, which is, I think, a really exciting plan for community policing. Yes, I think it is realistic that we might move forward in the next 2 years. We have not yet made a final decision. I was, however, really interested, Wayne, to see last week an all-party committee of the British Columbia legislature, including New Democrats and Liberals, voted in favor of a recommendation to create a British Columbia provincial police plan. And I know from my discussions with other premiers that at least a couple of other provinces are interested in this. We all see the benefit of community policing. Our cities benefit from that with their municipal police forces. Ontario and Quebec benefit from it and Newfoundland from their provincial police services. So I'm seriously interested in it, but we haven't finished the consultations, and I will let you know when we're ready to move forward to the next stage.
Does that mean you will be willing to reach out to the NDP to form an all-party committee to look at this after the consultations?
Well, perhaps, but they've been opposed to the concept, like they always are. They're opposed to everything, and typically quite viciously so. With so it's unfortunate. Other provinces, you see opposition parties willing to support good ideas from the government and put down the partisanship from time to time. The BC Liberal opposition just did that on this question of provincial policing. The NDP in BC does not see it as an ideological question. I would encourage the Alberta NDP to actually read the recommendations from Pricewaterhouse, because I think people, frankly, on the left, so-called progressive perspectives, would support what we're talking about here. Would include bringing psychologists and social workers integrated into the police to help with people who are coping with addictions and mental health challenges, a greater focus on crime prevention, alternative sentencing for people with addictions, greater involvement of First Nations, much stronger civilian governance and oversight. Sure. These are things that I would think the NDP should support. They are in principle in British Columbia. I'd invite the NDP here to give it a second thought.
All right, we'll have to grab that template. All right, on to the phones. Bob has been hanging on for, at least 15 minutes here. Bob's got a question on the Kananaskis Conservation Pass. Go ahead, Bob.
Oh, good morning, guys, and thanks for taking my call and for the great program. Premier Kenney, and also thanks for this pausing the provincial gas tax. Much appreciated. My question concerns the Kananaskis Country Conservation Pass. You seem to be getting a run of us seniors this morning. But Premier Kenney, as a single senior who enjoys, trying to get out to the mountains, which is one of the great blessings we have in our wonderful province, with the cost to go for 1 day in Banff National Park or any of the national parks is $9. To go to K Country is $15. An annual pass for a senior for the national parks is just under $62, and for K Country it's $90. Would your government please consider and hopefully implement a savings for seniors to come to for the Kananaskis Conservation Pass?
Thanks, Bob.
And part two, please, if I may. I've been trying to
make it quick, Bob. Yeah.
Part two, I would like to see clear accountability for off-highway vehicle users. I think, truthfully, it should be clear what they are paying to wreak, if you want to call it a conservation pass, wreak much more severe ecological damage. And I know they pay the registration fee.
Thanks, Bob.
Yeah, Bob, on the second point, you're right. We have imposed an additional fee for OHV users to pay for, partly to pay for the infrastructure. And as you know, there are limits in terms of what trails they can use and whatnot. We are trying to find the right balance to allow for appropriate recreation, but that does not disturb the environment, the park. And then so again, bringing in that user fee, particularly for OHV users in many areas of public lands, was something we committed to do in the last election, have done. On seniors, let me think about that. I mean, you're right. It is typical that there be a preferential rate for different kinds of passes and services for seniors. That's a legit point. I just want to remind listeners, Bob, why we brought in the K-Country Pass. The park was frankly being neglected for years and years. We didn't have enough conservation officers out there. Kananaskis is, I understand it, is the most visited and used provincial park in Canada by a country mile. Huge numbers of people visiting. We are getting piles of garbage being left behind, people stranded in the backcountry without appropriate response times for search and rescue. We had infrastructure that was totally inadequate, falling apart, inadequate parking, et cetera. And we realized we had to spend millions and millions of dollars upgrading the infrastructure, hiring more staff, faster search and rescue response time, and it had to be paid for somehow. And it's a normal principle in Canada that for, enjoying big, expensive outdoor parks like that the users contribute at least a small portion of the maintenance cost. So that's why we brought in the Conservation Pass. It's won awards from conservation groups because it's the right way to tie maintaining the park to users. But I'll consider your point about seniors.
All right. Text line question, and this one from Edmonton. Providing you win the leadership review, what are you going to do to increase the autonomy for Alberta and defend our interests against a hostile federal NDP Liberal coalition in Ottawa?
Well, here's some news, Wayne. I understand that the Alberta Appeal Court may be issuing its long-awaited decision on our constitutional challenge of the federal No More Pipelines law, as I call it, Bill C-69, which is a critical fight to defend our constitutional powers to regulate the development of our own resources, including oil and gas. So this is so important on the future of pipelines, our economy, our energy sector, and much more. That's one thing right on the immediate horizon. Secondly, we, as I mentioned, we just got legal status to join in the lawsuit against the use of the Federal Emergencies Act, which we see as a violation of our jurisdiction. Thirdly, we have created the Alberta Chief Firearms Officer, the Alberta Provincial Parole Board. We fought and won control over key areas of our economy from the feds, like regulation of industrial GHG emissions, of methane regulations, northern caribou habitat protection, and much more. We are very seriously looking at both the Alberta Provincial Police and potential pension plan concepts as well.
All right. Related question, this goes back to your point number one. Brent is calling a question about oil royalties. So this kind of ties into the pipeline thing a little bit. Go ahead, Brent.
Yes, Mr. Premier. We get oil royalties. Why can't we take them in kind? Because the value added is way more profitable than just a barrel of oil. So if we took them in kind and got the value added to it, we would fare much better.
Yeah, actually, Brent, through the Alberta Petroleum Marketing Corporation, which is a Crown corporation owned by the province, we actually do, in some cases, take barrels in kind. And so that corporation was created some time ago so that it could engage in complex transactions like that when it's to the benefit of the provinces. And sometimes those companies do pay us that way, and then we market those barrels.
All right. Related question from Kim. Kim is calling in with costs associated with pipeline purchase. Go ahead, Kim. You're on with Premier Kenney.
Hey, that's exactly what I'm calling about. So I'm just calling to find out the numbers, including the total payout to the previous pipeline owner, past and ongoing construction, maintenance, and mothballing costs, finance costs, as well as your government's traveling and marketing costs as you unsuccessfully searched out international investors to take on this, failed project.
Are you talking Keystone XL?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, so Keystone XL, the primary investor in Keystone XL from day one has been TC Energy. I understand that they invested around $7 billion into the project since it began 10 or 12 years ago. The government of Alberta stepped in with a $1 billion preferred equity partnership role, plus a potential loan guarantee draw of up to $7 billion, I believe, but only a couple of billion of that was triggered. All of the costs, to Kim, all of the costs associated have been made transparent. We put that into the public accounts. I believe that if not, I don't have the detailed report in front of me, obviously, but I will say this: we have launched our legal challenge against the Biden administration's veto of Keystone XL to reclaim what we invested, and I believe it was an appropriate and necessary investment. Our government was elected to fight like heck for a future for our largest industry and the hundreds of thousands of people whose livelihoods depend on it. If Keystone XL was done, it would for us represent about a $30 billion increase in royalties to the Alberta Treasury over the next decade alone. And that's money for schools, hospitals, healthcare, and education. Just like the Government of Canada invested in the Trans Mountain expansion, because getting Canadian energy to global markets is clearly in our economic interest. As I say, we are protecting our investment in that NAFTA challenge that we filed against the U.S. government.
Question from the text line. Premier Kenney, is there any discussion on how and when electric vehicles will pay additional taxes to make up for the taxes that they don't buy or that they don't pay by not buying gasoline?
Could you repeat the question, Wayne? Sorry.
Yeah. Is there any discussion on how and when electric vehicles will pay additional taxes to make up for the taxes that they don't pay by not buying gasoline?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Misunderstood that. Yeah, there has been some discussion of that. And in the long run, the whole principle of the gas tax is that drivers through it help to contribute to the maintenance of the roads. And as we have a growing number, if there's a growing market shift from gas to electricity powered vehicles, we'll lose that revenue source. So I think that's something that in the future we're going to have to look at.
All right. Price of gas question from Gord. Go ahead, Gord, calling from Edmonton area.
Hello there.
Hi, Gord.
Hey, thanks for giving us a gas rebate. And now they took it away. Basically, they put 10 cents a liter back on yesterday. Can't you guys get after these guys? They're gouging us, and as simple as that.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Gord. I think you're talking about the price on gasoline at the pump. So you're right. We provided the 13 cent a liter pause on that. Now it's true that prices overall have gone up in the last few days. But that's because of the overall price of gasoline. It's not. I just saw an analysis by University of Calgary economist Trevor Toome yesterday, and I'm just going to quote from that, Wayne, because I think it's a good answer to the question. He says, "With gas prices on the rise, some have asked me if this means Alberta's gas tax holiday failed. No, it's not prices today versus March 31st that matters. It's prices versus what they would have been without the gas tax cut. Agree or not with the policy, the evidence is clear. The tax holiday lowers prices." And he estimates that even though there's been a recent increase, we're still 13 cents below where we would be had we not paused the collection of the provincial fuel tax.
All right. Question, this is a health-related question now from Edmonton. I would like to ask the Premier why he feels cutting the pump program in the hopes of saving a few $1 million. And this is regards to diabetics. Has he spoken with any of the pump users in Alberta? He is oblivious to the damage he is doing to the lives of type 1 diabetics. This is a huge step backwards.
So, Wayne, I do know that we have actually expanded access for certain services and treatments for people struggling with diabetes, and on the pump issue in particular, let me look into that. Here we go. I'll just say that receive these benefits at no cost. We recognize the challenges of monitoring and managing diabetes and are supporting Albertans living with this chronic condition while managing costs. And we expect that insulin pump therapy program will continue to receive coverage. 30% are already enrolled in government plans, and many are already in low-income supplementary health benefit plans, and a large number of Albertans will see insulin devices and provided health benefits. And Albertans pay a co-payment for them that will get 30% of a claim, up to a maximum of $25.
All right. Now, this is a part 2 question that just came in. Are you aware that Alberta Blue Cross plans will cost families money and do not come close to covering the cost of insulin pumps and supplies? Do you know that children will be forced to return to taking up to 10 needle injections every single day because their parents make too much to be classified as low income, but they don't make enough to pay the thousands out of pocket for a pump and supplies?
Well, as I just mentioned in my answer, there is a co-payment of 30% up to a maximum of $25.
All right. Let's go back to the phones. And who's been waiting the longest here? Logan has been holding on for, over 20 minutes. Logan, thanks for your patience. You're on with Premier Kenny.
Hey there, Mr. Premier. In the past week, I have had 3 friends die of drug overdoses. They all thought they were doing cocaine, but they actually died of fentanyl. In the past 2 years, I have had 9 friends die of drug overdoses. 7 of the 9 all thought they were doing one drug, when in factuality, they were doing fentanyl, and they died of fentanyl overdoses. 2 of the 9 were actually died of the drug that they were doing.
And your question,
my personal opinion, my question is, as long as we keeping these drugs in the hands of the gangs and the cartels, the supply of drugs is just going to keep getting more and more poisoned. This has been one of the worst years for me, for deaths and friends and family. I want to know what the Premier is going to do to help stop my friends from dying.
Okay, thank you, Logan. I'm very sorry to hear about the losses amongst friends and family that you've experienced, and it's a sad reflection of the addictions crisis that we are seeing. Over 2,000 deaths last year to drug overdoses, and it's not just in Alberta. We're seeing this in many jurisdictions, including those that have effectively decriminalized street drugs, like some of the large West Coast U.S. cities. There's been basically, let me say, in the concept of we have to be very careful about effectively creating a law-free zone because the cartels and the black market, dangerous drugs is always going to be there. And if we don't have any enforcement against trafficking, that creates a very dangerous situation. You just need to look at what's happened in the Lower East Side of downtown East Side of Vancouver, in places like Portland, San Francisco, Los Angeles, where there's been non-enforcement, and it's become a magnet for people struggling with addictions, where we end up with even more deaths and more overdoses. We are supporting some very good programs, some opioid therapy replacement programs, including a virtual program where people can get their prescription online and can check in with the physician online wherever they live. But the most important thing is that we offer people a way out of addiction. And that's why we have increased by 8,000 the number of treatment spaces in Alberta. We've eliminated fees for government-funded treatment facilities. We're building 5 large, long-term residential treatment programs and centers across the province, and a lot more as well. So we recognize the nature of the crisis, but legalizing trafficking, I don't think, is the solution.
All right. We're going to switch gears. Justin has a question about federal politics. Go ahead, Justin. You're on with Premier Kenny.
Good morning, Premier Kenny. I hope you're having fun at the Manning Center Conference, and I enjoyed watching the debate with the federal Conservative leadership candidates. My question is whether or not you're going to endorse anyone in that race for the time being.
No, Justin, I'm not planning on that. As you know, I'm focused on our own work at hand in Alberta, and I just hope that the federal Conservative candidates all speak to the issues that matter to Albertans. We are the key engine of Canada's economy. We are fighting a federal government that has done incalculable damage to our largest industry, and I think represents a threat to our long-term vital economic interests. So I want to hear federal Conservative candidates with a specific plan to repeal the No More Pipelines law, the tanker ban, to work with us on a responsible emissions reduction strategy, and to actually be friends rather than foes of Canada's largest job-creating industry.
Text message now from Calgary. I don't have a name, but the question is, why did the UCP government close all the agriculture research stations? Any economist will tell you R&D adds more GDP to the economy than what it costs the government. Almost all the agriculture budget goes to crop insurance. Research was less than 1%.
Well, I don't think we closed all centers. I'd have to double check that. Doesn't sound correct to me. But what we did is we ran on a platform commitment to consult with farmers about what should be the research priorities, and we were contracting out, rather than doing all of this in-house, much more expensive as a government bureaucracy, we've contracted out to academics, research projects that have been prioritized by farmers following our consultations with them. And that's the input we got from ag producers, that they wanted to have more control over the Alberta research program so that it's more relevant to the future needs of Alberta food producers.
Okay, back to the phones, and this one from Les. Les, go ahead.
Good morning, Premier Kenney. Les Spurgeon with the Village of Bicycler. I spoke to about a month or so ago about MSI Funding.
Okay, Les.
And you told me that it was supposed to be reduced by 10%. I did send you a follow-up letter as to our conversation and a spreadsheet showing the differences. And basically, we in 2021, we were at $324,000 as the MSI funding, and this year we're at $142,000. And you told me it was 10%. You were holding back 10%, which would is only $32,000, not $181,000. So I'm just wondering when we're going to get a response back about the $150,000 difference, especially given how much royalties that the province is bringing in. I realize you told us that we need to be prudent at this time, but at the back, you're basically doing it on the backs of the lowest level of governance that can't go anywhere else. We can't go into a deficit.
Sure. But this is not, these are capital grants. So this is not about, for you, it's not about deficits, but your capital budget. But let me just say this, that what we did was, okay, let me back this up. Say when we came to office, we inherited an $8 billion deficit from the NDP. Our provincial debt was hurtling towards $100 billion. We simply had to find some areas to cut spending. We asked Dr. Janice McKinnon to lead a expert panel advising us on how to get the province's financial house in order. And one of the areas she said we were where we were spending far more than any province in Canada was on capital grants to municipalities. And now those grants had been so she said that's safe because now when the province spends money on our own infrastructure, it is capital budget. We get to amortize that spending typically over about 35 years. It shows up on our balance sheet as an asset and not a liability. But when we give you capital grants, it hits our deficit, our bottom line. And so I signaled before the last election that there was going to be a reduction in this. That's the advice we got from Dr. McKinnon's panel. And so that's why we've implemented a reduction. Now, at the same time, we actually increased funding capital grants to municipalities through the COVID crisis through 2020 and 21. We put out over $500 million in additional capital grants to munis to help to stimulate construction demand during the global economic collapse to be counter-cyclical. But now that we're back in a growth phase across the economy and public infrastructure spending is competing with private sector that's building more, it means we're just feeding into construction inflation and making all the projects less efficient. So this is part of our commitment to get the province's fiscal house in order. Overall, like I say, we brought a lot of the money forward to spend additional funds during the COVID period when it was most needed.
All right. We're going to pause for a break. If you have questions for Premier Kenney, questions, concerns, issues you feel need to be addressed, phone or text 403-974-8255 in Edmonton, 780-496-0063, and across the province, 1-800-563-7770. I'm Wayne Nelson with Premier Jason Kenney. We'll be back to wrap things up in our final segment on Your Province, Your Premier.
I'm Colin Gingell from Mercedes-Benz Country Hills. I remember growing up and I was having a pretty lousy day. I opened the door and the smell of fresh baked cookies greeted me. I walked into the kitchen and got the biggest hug from my mom. She just knew. In that moment, the world made sense again. Tomorrow is Mother's Day. Let's give our mothers the love they so richly deserve. Mercedes-Benz Country Hills, with immense gratitude for moms still with us and those that have left us too soon.
You can have a more beautiful home today with Annalyn Decorating. Get the service and advice that's made Annalyn famous, and they have plenty of Benjamin Moore paint in stock so you can start your project right away. Annalyn Decorating Center, Richmond Road and 28th Street Southwest.
One band, one concert, 25 languages, and a style that defies classification. The one and only Pink Martini bring their unforgettable jazz sound to the Jack Singer Concert Hall on May 19th, featuring vocalist China Forbes. Don't miss the party. Get your tickets now at artscommons.ca/martini, part of the TD Jazz Series from Arts Commons Presents.
It's funny, isn't it? How we call them small businesses. But if there's one thing we've learned over the last year, it's that the small things in life, like an after-work drink at your favorite pub, or the coffee shop that knows your order by heart, or even just getting your hair cut once in a while, were a pretty big deal after all. At Shaw Business, we're proud to connect you because you connect us. Visit business.shaw.ca to get brighter deals for brighter days. Shaw Business, brighter together.
Thinking about starting insulin? You might be. Traceba is the #1 prescribed long-acting insulin by endocrinologists in Canada. Its flexible dosing means you can take once daily Traceba at whatever time works best for you, with at least 8 hours between doses, even right after you test your morning blood sugar. Talk to your doctor today to see if Traceba is right for you, and visit nowready.ca.
The following is paid for by ProLife Alberta Political Association, 855-398-8486, and does not necessarily reflect the views of this station.
ProLife Alberta is a group of women and men committed to promoting pro-life public policy, with the belief that all human life deserves protection, especially innocent human life. ProLife Alberta is working with your help to build the political pro-life movement in Alberta and to protect the most vulnerable preborn babies and their moms by passing laws protecting them. Visit ProLifeAlberta.com and let the beat go on.
Your parents have shown so much independence in their lives, but as they get older, things have changed. They still want to stay in the one home they've known forever, but you can't look after them 24/7. That's where Home Instead comes in. They're your family-funded home care provider who provides highly personalized home care for the loved one in your life, wherever they call home. Give them the same care that they have given you all your life. Visit homeinsteadcalgary.com.
Big Yellow bags contain rich black garden soil and help retain water in your lawn and beds, which means less chemical fertilizer. Order your Big Yellow bag now and save $10. Save $30 on your second bag in the same order. To order, log on to bigyellowbag.com.
This is your hotline to the leader of our province. Call now to talk to Premier Jason Kenney, 403-974-8255.
Your province, your premier on 770 CHQR, Calgary's News, today's talk.
Wayne Nelson back with you as host and moderator of Your Province, Your Premier, broadcast throughout the province every Saturday morning from 10 until 11 in Calgary on 770 CHQR and in Edmonton on 630 CHED. This is your opportunity to chat one-on-one. If you've got a question, a concern, an issue, something you want to bring to the Premier's attention, just phone or text 403-974-8255, 780-496-0063, or across the province at 1-800-563-7770. 770. All right, we're going to go to Dan now. Dan's got a question about vaccines. Dan, please keep it short. We've got, I don't know if we're going to be able to get all the callers or even half of the text messages in. So go ahead. You're on with Premier Kenny.
Yes, good morning, gentlemen. Mr. Premier, in the past approximately 18 to 20 months, you've told Albertans to go get vaccinated. The vaccines are safe. They reduce hospitalizations. I just cannot understand how you can say that they're safe with the amount of people that I've seen personally injured, heart attacks, strokes, paralyzations, and deaths. The most recent, an 8-year-old girl, 2 days after taking the experimental shot, she dies of a heart attack. And you continue to say they're safe.
All right.
I just don't understand. And Mr. Kenny, it's never too late to do the right thing.
It's never too late for people to get vaccinated because doing so helps to protect them and our healthcare system from COVID-19. We know that there is the protective effect from severe outcomes from COVID-19, defined as severe illness, hospitalization, and death, is remarkable. And that protectiveness increases with the booster dose, for example. So we do encourage people who got the second dose to get the third dose. That's what it's from around the world after billions of people have received these safe, approved, and effective vaccines. In terms of adverse effects, we monitor that very closely. And I don't have the exact number in front of me, but I believe that with well over 7 million doses administered in Alberta since we started the program about 14 months ago, that we have recorded fewer than 5,000 severe or what are called adverse effects following immunization. And I believe we still have only identified a fatality that is connected to somebody who received a dose of COVID-19 vaccine. That was a woman in her 40s about a year ago who had received a Moderna shot, and she had a myocardial infraction as a result. That's very sad. And I know that there are people out there who are claiming that people are dying as a result of the COVID vaccine. Listen, 90% of the Alberta adult population has received the vaccine, and what we can see is not an increase in death from the vaccinated population, but obviously an increase in excess deaths in our population as a result of both COVID itself and addiction overdoses.
All right. Swap topics now. Keith is calling from Edmonton. Question on insurance rates. Go ahead, Keith.
How you doing today, Premier?
Good, thank you.
I have a question about the insurance rates. They're out of control here in Alberta, and is there anything that you guys plan on doing about it? Because I know I'm not the only one struggling with insurance and getting to the point where you can barely afford it anymore.
Yeah, thanks, Keith. And the answer is yes. We passed a law last year that limits what are soft tissue damage awards in the courts. That was driving payouts from insurance policies very high. And that's now having a good effect. We're starting to see more insurance companies apply for a reduction in their rates. I know AMA has asked for, I think, a 7.4% reduction in their premiums. And that should be a market leader because other companies, if they want to maintain market share, will have to follow suit. So, we're going to continue. There are unreasonable increases, but overall, that's how Alberta got on top of this about 15 years ago when we saw a similar spike in premiums. And now, if we were to, as some have suggested, impose 4 years ago, was a lot of companies left the Alberta market. A lot of people couldn't get policies at all. A lot of people had to pay for all 12 months in advance rather than being on a payment plan. So distorting the market like that is not a long-term solution. What we need is choice and competition. Ultimately, that should get the rates down.
All right, we have time for maybe one or two more calls or texts. I want to hit this text message. This is an interesting one. Why is the Minister for the Status of Women a man?
Real Minister for the Status of Women is Whitney Isaac, who's a woman, the MLA for Calgary Glenmore. But that's part of a broader Ministry of Culture, and the Minister of Culture is Minister Ron Orr.
All right, quick question now from Robert on solar energy. And Robert, you'll have to make it quick because we have to wrap up the show.
No problem. Good afternoon, Minister. We have notification of a solar farm being built down in the High River area next to Frank Lake, which is a massive wildlife refuge. Why is that going ahead when there's going to be a lot of negative effects for that?
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I can hear you. Thanks very much. I don't know about that, but I'm aware. I mean, there's a number of solar farms being built across the province, and obviously they have to go through the usual land use and zoning process, both for the local municipalities. If there's any broader environmental impacts, then Alberta Environment gets engaged. If they're super big projects, then maybe even the feds come in on a joint review panel. So, we but at the end of the day, if landowners decide they're going to lease their land to somebody to erect solar panels, they're using their property rights. I think your question probably, let me think about this, Wayne, but I think the question is probably better put to the municipality because, as I say, they control zoning and they need to make sure that a large project like that does not have adverse overall impacts on the region.
All right. Premier Kenney, thanks for joining us once again today.
Thank you very much. This is a real mental workout. So many different issues, Wayne, but thank you. I really appreciate everybody calling in.
You bet. Now, I'm going to be on holidays for the next couple of weeks. Mike Tarasco will be sitting in this chair as next Saturday morning at this same time. So enjoy your time, and we'll talk next week. Well, Mike will talk next week. I'm Wayne Nelson, and you've been listening to Your Province, Your